Welcome to Daily Focus. I appreciate you joining me this morning as we look into 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to look at the last two verses, and I've entitled this one, Bring My Body into Subjection. And it is something that none of us really enjoy. It's why people hit snooze. It's why people snack. It's why people eat too much sugar. It's why people embrace addictions. It's why people mismanage their time. It's all of these things that we all struggle with. And it's because we like what we like and we want what we want. And we would rather justify and make ourselves feel better about what we've already decided we're going to do rather than discipline our body and bring it into subjection to what is right, rather than justifying what maybe is not good for it. And I've used the illustration many times that Romans talks about that we have a responsibility to mortify our flesh. That means to put it to death. We're to deny it. We're to starve it. We're to make it get stiff because of a lack of exercise. We are not to, and what I mean by our flesh is our selfishness, our natural bent to please self. We ought not cater to it. We ought not feed it. We ought not allow it to strengthen itself. We really need to deny it, mortify it, kill it, put it to death, so that we live in subjection to the Spirit of God, that we are influenced most by the Spirit of God, that we are brought under the control of the Spirit of God. And so we're feeding our spirit and starving our flesh. Well, that's what Paul was talking about in 1 Corinthians 9:25. He says, and every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. In other words, you got to play by the rules. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. In other words, that I would live a hypocritical life because I'm confronting everyone else's weaknesses while making an exception for my own weaknesses, that I'm condemning other people for their failures while pretending like I don't have any failures of my own, that I'm being judgmental regarding someone else's activity or attitude while excusing my activity and attitude. Paul is saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to ruin my testimony. I don't want to be inconsistent. I don't want to be uncredible or to lack credibility when I'm presenting the gospel. And he's really, in the context of 1 Corinthians 9, he's talking about the amazing ability for the Spirit of God to transform a life, to completely make us different. We are so different from what we used to be. Old things are passing away, and behold, all things are becoming new. And that transformation in my life is the fruit of the Spirit. And it is that I'm less like myself, I'm less selfish, and more like the Spirit of God, more spiritual. And I'm not doing that so that people will give me accolades. I'm doing that so that they come to a right conclusion about Christ and what he's able to do. And Paul is saying, listen, as I preach the gospel and telling people, listen, you don't have to be in bondage to sin. You don't have to be in bondage to selfishness. You can be set free of all of that by the Spirit of God through salvation. And so don't live in bondage anymore, but let the Spirit of God save your soul, secure your eternity, and give you spiritual fruit for God's glory. You can do that, not on your own, but it's a choice you make, and nobody else can make it for you. And the choice that we make is to repent of our sin and our selfishness, turn by faith to God and what he has offered in a gift of salvation. And by faith, we receive salvation that transforms our lives. And then we simply live yielded, making the decision to let the Spirit of God rule and reign in our lives. Now, we're going to win that sometimes, we're going to lose that sometimes, but nobody else can make those decisions for us. We have to make them. And so we're either making the decisions to glorify God in our body and in our spirit, which are his, or we tend to feed our flesh. Well, when you feed your flesh, it gets stronger. When you exercise your flesh, it gets stronger. And that selfish tendency to want to live life your own way and call it spiritual, call it God's will, becomes more ingrained. And the only person deceived is us. Everyone else watching just sees us as a hypocrite. And so Paul is saying, you know what? I bring my body into subjection so that as I preach Christ and his transforming power, I look credible instead of hypocritical. And so God is saying, listen, nobody makes your decisions for you. You have to make them. Now, God will help you to make good decisions. He will empower you and me to make good decisions, but he's not going to make them for us, and he's not going to make them without us. We're going to have to walk in the Spirit so we don't fulfill the lust of the flesh. And the way we do that is by feeding the Spirit, starving our selfishness, exercising the Spirit, and not exercising our selfishness. And as we do those things, God promises that we will bear fruit for his glory and make a difference for eternity. May God bless you. I hope you have a great day today. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.